on, everybody? Welcome back to an exciting new episode of the Viall Files Freestyle Edition. I just decided officially, until further notice, that's what we're calling it. We have what I think is going to be another jam-packed, fantastic episode for you. My friend Morgan Absher is with us in studio today to help break down all the craziness that is going on in the pop culture world.
I'm so scared.
Scared? Why are you scared?
I don't know. There's just a lot going on right now.
There is.
It's very tumultuous.
We have, obviously, the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, which we'll be discussing more of. So much things we have yet to cover. We have Dr. Darcy. She'll be zooming in here at some point this episode. You may know her from Famously Single. Is that the show? She's like the love expert on.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, she's been following this case also with some intrigue. I know after last week's episode, a forensic psychologist, I think it was, came on and testified and talked about Amber Heard's personality disorder. What does that mean? Does that mean multi-personality? What is like we want to get a breakdown of what that all means. One question I'm curious of, and maybe the dear doctor can help us out with this, but like, how is this not a violation of Amber Heard's HIPAA rights? Because it's like in court. Like, now the world knows of her diagnosis, her mental health, and while certainly we're watching this trial with some intrigue, kind of seems like a violation of like her personal information.
Yeah, which is why this whole trial is so shocking, because typically celebrities don't subject themselves to just opening up like this. So that's like, it's like you knew this shit was going to come out. But here we are.
What does her diagnosis even mean in terms of her ability to, I don't know, comprehend reality, I guess, to a certain degree? Like,
her reality is definitely different than ours.
I don't know. Dr. Darcy will help us understand what this all means. I have an update. I told it, I don't know if you're aware of this, Morgan, but
probably not.
We're big Harry Styles fans here on this show. I saw him in concert a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and it was good.
I was reminded of the story that I told my audience where, like, my dream is to have Harry Styles on the podcast.
Okay.
I want him to do an Ask Nick where people call in with their relationship questions and Harry Styles and I empathetically and lovingly give feedback.
That's a good dream.
I think he would enjoy it.
Yeah.
You don't seem like you believe it's possible.
I absolutely think it's possible for you.
Anywho, I was running
6 months from now.
I was running around my neighborhood as I do.
Mm-hmm.
And like, this is like a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And a gentleman in an old school Mercedes like drove up to the stop sign, and I was running, and we looked at each other, and I thought to myself, is that Harry Styles? And I thought, no way. But something in my brain was so convinced it might be Harry Styles that I DM'd him.
Okay.
And I was like, was that you running? Was that you driving? And honestly, like, I wasn't sure. But the other day, a fan or a listener or someone who heard my anecdotal story tagged me, and this was just days ago.
Oh, yeah.
Of Harry Styles in an old school black Mercedes. And I'm just thinking, what are the chances that I saw someone driving? Now, to be honest, I don't remember if the car was black. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is a black old school Mercedes, but it's clearly Harry Styles. And honestly, I think it probably was him. It probably was him.
It was him, easily.
And so like Harry Styles and I had a moment.
You made eye contact.
He definitely, the person I saw recognized me.
Yeah.
And I recognized them, and we like stared at each other.
It's like that Spider-Man, like
yeah.
I don't know if it was that much, and I don't know if he was excited. I've heard he watches The Bachelor. It might have just been like, oh, that fucking guy.
No, I'm sure he was excited.
I don't know if he was excited, but
I'm sure he was.
I just know that so I just feel like we're already putting it out there. Like, we got this
yeah, we're manifesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Anyway.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, I think so.
I have faith in you.
Do we want to like bring people up to speed with what we know about the trial before what are the burning questions we have for the doctor? Do we want to discuss that? So Amber shit on someone's bed.
Tried to blame the dog.
Yeah, that was the best quote from that. was Depp's response to that was he said they're teacup Yorkies. They weigh about 4 pounds each. The photograph that I saw, I lived with those dogs for many years. It was not the dogs.
There's a clear difference between dog poop and
human
poop.
feces. As someone who lives in Hollywood, I definitely know that difference.
Yeah, you walk down the street, you see piles of it everywhere. Like LA's it's not the cleanest sometimes.
But also like small dog. Like
yeah, it's tiny.
If something's 4 pounds,
and she said she was joking, so she's admitted to this. Yes, we can.
I'm not sure. She did finally admit it.
I guess. I think the testimony of the
limo driver.
She called it a horrible practical joke.
It was like the head of
Was the
security. Yeah, it's the limo driver, and
that's what
security
the guard said.
That's a non-negotiable for me.
Yeah,
shitting on the bed.
Yeah, that's not.
The security guards told the court that he and Amber Heard had a conversation pertaining to the surprise she left in the boss's bed.
I mean, I get everyone poops, but holy shit. But we can agree that this was a horrid act of Amber's. Are we on the fence of like, oh no, it's funny?
Not funny.
No.
Okay, I don't know. We have people. Just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Well, and it was before she like left for a trip too.
To Coachella.
She up
she
and
shit
left.
on a bed and then went to Coachella.
Damn.
There's something about every time they say Coachella in this case that just, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's because I've been to Coachella and there's like, I've done that too. Like I can.
You can relate in some way.
Yeah. Like there are people just like us.
Celebrities are just like us.
But it also like kind of begs the question because it shows like the depths of their fights and like what was happening. And so it's sort of like, wow, like how were they? What I really am curious, like kind of like what the dialogue was like for both of them in choosing to stay together when they knew this is how ugly and insane their fights were getting.
Well, I think that's, again, a question for Dr. Darcy. I've had conversations with friends, not other doctors, about what this diagnosis of her personality means. Part of which I heard was this, and I think they've talked about in this trial, this fear of abandonment, which would make sense in theory, right? Like if you have a type of personality that pushes people away, I can only assume that as you in adult life have these intimate relationships, you might know there's like something off, like you push people away, and that compounds this fear of abandonment, but you can't help yourself.
No, I mean we all self-sabotage. This is that on a bigger scale.
On a bigger scale,
Way
and
bigger.
I wonder if again we can, I suppose, have empathy for Amber that she might have this condition, not an excuse for any shitting or violent behavior.
Well, even people without personality disorders or mental like health struggles like this, there's so many ways to just get stuck in that toxic relationship loop and stuff you put up with. And you're like, I know this isn't healthy, but like maybe it'll get better. Oh, we love each other. We can work it out. And so it's like, this is again just on a way bigger, worse scale.
Yeah.
It's rough.
And then we've seen since last week pictures of Johnny Depp and his black eye.
Have you also seen the video of, this went around like a while ago, but the video that someone caught on the red carpet where she raises her hand to like move her hair and people think he like kind of flinches and like looks over because she raises her hand.
I did not
it's like
see
a very
that.
interesting moment. I'll see if I can find it, but it's like a very...
Yeah, I saw that one.
If you don't have a grandfather like Amanda to teach you things like German,
But you still want to connect with a family member, if you want to connect when you're traveling. Learning language is good for your brain, folks. It is good for the brain. And you might not have a grandfather on call who can teach you German. And so that's where Babbel comes in, because you'll actually talk with native speakers and learn applicable phrases. This is like real authentic language learning taught by native speakers.
Yeah, Babbel's 15-minute lessons make it the perfect way to learn a new language on the go. Other language learning apps use AI for their lesson plans, but Babbel lessons were created by over 100 language experts. They're teaching methods that have been scientifically proven to be effective With Babbel, you can choose from 14 different languages, including Spanish, French, Italian, and German. Plus, they have speech recognition technology that helps you improve your pronunciation and accent. They have live classes. They also have podcasts you can listen to about languages. They have Babbel Live, where you can work with a live instructor, which I've done, which is really helpful. Whether it's wanting to become fluent in a language, you can use Babbel for that. Or maybe you're taking a trip to Europe this summer. Or
you said you and Natalie have been talking about Paris. You might want to brush up.
And maybe you just want to learn how to
order something,
order a croissant, or ask for directions, and kind of just immerse yourself with the community that you're traveling to. Babbel is absolutely perfect for all those things. So right now, you can save up to 60% off your subscription when you go to babbel.com/VIALL. That's babbel.com/VIALL for 60% off your subscription. Babbel, language for life. Here's the one thing I don't get about the case right now is I don't get why it's so long. Because at this point, and again, I'm dumb and I don't know anything, but it seems like we, at least from what we heard from the trial, that there's evidence that suggests, or there's evidence that shows that Amber Heard was physically abusive towards Johnny. Mm-hmm. We've learned about her diagnosis. We've seen the text messages to Amber Heard from Johnny. That's, I think, for a lot of people, we know it's not okay to talk that way, but I think a lot of people are thinking, I've said some crazy shit in the heat of the moment. That's much different than following through with any of those things. And I think because, again, last week, there's that, I think you see it all the time, the death knell is pretending you're one way or portraying yourself as something only to be found out that you might be different. Mm-hmm. And people really react to that. So in this case, you have, for a lot of people, we all just took Amber Heard at her word. We looked at Johnny Depp after this op-ed is in a very different way.
Yeah, for sure.
And now things are coming out that makes us unsure. Now, I know there's people there was the trial in England, and Depp lost that case, and I think there's still people who have said, well, that proves that he did these things. That might be true, I don't know, but my understanding is all they've proved is that, and they have very different laws in England, and free speech is propped up more than it is here. The press is harsh, and they get away with kind of virtually anything there. And my understanding is the only thing that Johnny Depp lost there was them saying, we see enough proof to say that this paper's not liable for doing that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that necessarily. I still have yet to see any hard evidence that Johnny physically abused Amber. And again, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I haven't seen it, but I think you're seeing a lot of people almost kind of reverse engineer what they used to think about Johnny and Amber. And everything they're digesting seems to be as a reaction to that, right? I feel like I'm just seeing this incredible support and empathy for Johnny, it seems, out in the public.
Yeah, definitely. I think, people are ready to boycott Disney and the next Pirates movie, and I think there's been a big resurgence of his fans, and this is kind of weird to me, but all the fan edits of him in court. Have you guys seen those where it's thirst traps over this court footage and what he's saying and stuff, and I'm okay, you can show support, but this is also a very important trial, so I'm
yes.
The thirst traps kind of weird me out, but yeah, it's nice to see him gaining that support, because he was so hurt by that, his apology videos that he came out and he's I'm so sorry, I'm putting my fans in this terrible position, and so it's hard.
Even I think it was his lawyer that was saying, what did you lose as a result of this op-ed? And he just took a moment and he was I lost everything.
Yeah, everything.
You could tell how emotional he was, and he was everyone now views me as someone who would abuse women and who did all these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it seems like he made the choice between knowing that things were going to come out about him. To your point, celebrities just don't do this.
No.
Even when they've done things wrong, or even when they haven't done things wrong,
they always settle.
The playbook's just, not only settle, but it's just let it, it'll go away.
Blow over.
It'll blow over. And honestly, it usually does. But Johnny was just like, I don't care what comes out about me.
He just wants to clear his name.
It's the impression is, he's just like, I don't hit women. I don't hit people. I might have said some crazy things. I might have said some things. You can call me a verbally abuser if you want. I don't know if he's down for that, but it just seems like, there was this text message thread that was made public where it was Johnny Depp. I don't know who he was texting, but he was basically
Paul
like
Bettany, maybe.
Yeah, and he was basically like, I don't give a fuck anymore. Like, it was kind of like this, do what you want with me. I have no fear. She doesn't believe I'm going to do this. I don't care anymore. And regardless of what you think about this case, when you read that, you're kind of, I think we all know what it's like to kind of feel like we're stuck in a corner. Maybe not on this level, but on some point in life, you kind of feel like people are against you or whatever it is. And you kind of have that, like, I don't give a fuck mentality anymore. And it feels kind of empowering sometimes. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people saw this and the rallying behind Johnny.
Yeah, well, it's like he was so backed into the corner. He had no more cards to play. And so it's like, at that point, when you have nothing left, it's like, fuck it all. Like, here we go. And so I think like the recording that he does have where it was like her talking and she was like, yeah, go tell the world, Johnny. Tell the world that you were abused by a woman. And like, it's like that gaslighting. It's like, ooh,
and I think that hearing that, anyone who's heard that, we talked about this last week, like, what is it? Like, I think it's just triggering for everyone. It's triggering for men who have been emotionally abused by their partners or even physically abused and felt like no one's going to believe me. I think it's triggering for women, both, especially people who have been victims of like, what is it going to say? People aren't going to believe us anymore. They're going to use this as an excuse to like reasons for not to believe victims of any kind, men or women. And I think people are just so like that. Hearing that was and I guess that was my original point. I didn't finish it, but I'm confused why this trial is so long. Because despite what now it seems like we have the information we need. Now it just seems like an assassination of Amber's character. Where it's just like, now we just want, like, it seems like Johnny Depp seems just want to like pile on of like, tell these horrid stories about her.
I don't know. I just wonder if it's that or if her lawyers are just doing such a poor job. And like, in terms of like public opinion, like they're mockery on the internet.
Did you see the video where Johnny Depp's, the Amber Heard's lawyer objected to his own question?
Yeah. Which hearsay.
Hearsay. And then he almost like, he sounded confused.
And the judge is just like, you asked the question.
Yeah, which like TikTok, you see all these like lawyers break it down. He was correct in what he was trying to do, but he used the wrong words to do it. So it's not like you can't object to your own question, but you can invalidate the response based on hearsay. So he fumbled the bag in terms of like what he said. He could have, it was legit, but not legit in how he said it.
Yeah, I think you think you have to throw a perfect game.
You do.
You do.
I mean, this is court. This isn't, you know what I mean? But everyone's like, yeah, she got her lawyers on Wish. Like, these are the Wish lawyers.
TaskRabbit.
Yeah. Like, fuck.
All right, we'll break it down more, but we have Dr. Darcy here. She is going to join us, and we have some questions for her. Dr. Darcy, thank you for joining.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Before we kind of dive into all the things we want to talk about with you, can you let my audience know a little bit about you, your background, your expertise, and then we'll go from there?
Sure. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker and I practice in New York City. My practice, alternatives counseling, has been around for 27 years. And I specialize in helping people thrive in their relationships.
Amazing.
I'm a relationship therapist.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we're hoping that maybe you could shed some light on some of the things that we're seeing in this trial.
I think I would need a laser beam, or I'm not sure if I need a laser beam or a spotlight, but yes, by all means, my intention is to try and connect some dots for people.
So are you able, I think our biggest question is to help us understand, like last week, there was a doctor who diagnosed Amber Heard with What was the diagnosis? It was
histrionic personality disorder was one of them.
Okay.
And borderline personality disorder was the other.
So what does that mean? Because I think a lot of people, including myself, were first kind of like, oh, she's got multiple personalities, or, I think there's a lot of ignorance around that, which I don't think is the case. So what does that mean? And I guess, like, other than being like, oh, Amber Heard's crazy, is it that simple? But like, how can we now better understand this diagnosis, and how does it play a role in the relationship?
Yeah, it's a specific brand of crazy. And I don't use that term lightly. I mean, the people with those two personality disorders are very, very sensitive to rejection and abandonment. And they unwittingly provoke it in their partners and in people in their lives. So there's lots of game playing, lots of testing to confirm that the relationship is really as solid as they need it to be to feel safe and secure in the relationship. And the defining characteristic of both of those personality disorders is the person feels emotions very, very intensely. So heightened sensitivity to emotions. Goes from 0 to 10. So 0 being completely neutral on the discomfort scale, 10 being the most uncomfortable imaginable. They feel those 8, 9s, and 10s on a regular basis and can almost never sense as they're escalating. They go from 0 to 10 almost instantaneously. So their emotions are very, very heightened. And what it does, not to dork out too much, is it throws them into the part of their brain called the amygdala, which is the oldest part of our brain. And it really, like, when you're in that part of the brain, the part of your brain that can think, your right mind, the part of your brain that can anticipate consequences to your behaviors, it's pulled offline. Once you're in the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex is offline. And so all the amygdala does is it keeps you alive. So they're immediately thrown into a fight response style. And doesn't necessarily mean they take off their gloves, but obviously in this case, she took off lots of things. Her gloves, I think probably, I don't even know. Like the fighting I read about was just at a level that I've been practicing 27 years. I've never heard of fighting like that. Now, to be clear, I do tend to work with the gifted and talented on the mental health spectrum. I tend to deal with people who are killing it in their lives and just want more from their relationships. So although sometimes people come into me limping a little, they are not, these are people who the rest of us just really want. We're inspired by these people that I work with. But that said, I didn't always work with this population. I've worked with people from all walks of life. I've never heard of fighting like this. So the heightened fight response style causes them to engage in a pattern of attention-seeking behaviors when they're escalated, which happens very easily. And it feels to the person who has these personality disorders as though they're going to die. They can't imagine a moment in time where they're not going to feel this way. They can't ponder that. They're very impulsive, and they will do anything to keep the connection going with their partner. So, like, for example, when Johnny claims that he has stepped away and said he needed to cool off, if that's not done in a very specific way, it feels very much like an abandonment. To the person who has this personality disorder, she or they feel provoked and will often go to great lengths, as we've all sadly read, to keep the person engaged, either verbally or physically or whatever. And so it's really about this hypervigilance around abandonment and rejection. They imagine it where it doesn't need to be existing, and they respond to it very impulsively and very toxically. That was such a long-winded
No, that was great. I appreciate you articulating that. My question, and it seems like, does it compound over time? Because it sounds like people with these personality disorders would just naturally push people away. And there must be some sort of self-awareness over time to know that, like, boy, no one can stand me after a couple months of dating them. And do they become even more like escalated, or even more like are more aggressive, more angry, or is it just, they just are this and it's always been an issue?
So they don't walk into a relationship with this as their calling card. They don't lead with this kind of behavior. There's small testing that's going on early in the relationship that when the partner or the prospective partner doesn't set a boundary, doesn't look like revolted and horrified by the behaviors, is a teaching, the person internalizes that as, and it's not conscious what is happening, but like, we teach people how to treat us. So if I'm on a date with somebody and we have a disagreement and that person hangs up on me, I'm probably, there's going to be a big consequence to the fact that the person even hung up on me, let alone calls me names, let alone escalates the volume of their voice, let alone breaks things or threatens to break up. So what these people wind up doing is they repulse healthy people, and the people that they surround themselves with are sort of people who will tolerate this. They know that that's the price of admission to be in a relationship with these people. So the question that you asked, backing up, was, does this get progressively worse over time, right? Yeah. And I think the answer is yes, it does. It either gets worse over time, because what she actually needs is somebody who can stand up to her and set a boundary and say no. But what we've got is these two people who are so riddled in privilege, both because they're white and because they're straight and because they're rich and because they're celebrities and because of what they look like. All of these things are different boxes that are ticked in the privilege category. And they've got so much of it that, like, nobody ever says no to either one of them. And so together, they were just like an atomic bomb. They were beyond toxic.
Yeah. What role does Johnny Depp has talked about his relationship with his mother and how that sounded like maybe abusive or at least problematic. What role, if at all, does that play on, maybe Johnny being drawn or accepting of this type of behavior, as opposed to someone who's just like, well, that's a boundary I can no longer be a part of and just walks away, as opposed, he stayed around for a while.
Oh, he absolutely did. So he offers this up as an excuse or an explanation for how he found himself in this crazy relationship. And actually, for those of us who are trained, we hear that and say, so basically, you're saying you haven't done your own work. You didn't do your own healing. And when you don't heal it, you date it or you marry it or you become business partners with it. Like that, nobody gets to bypass their own work. And the fact that he was in a relationship with somebody like her tells me everything I need to know about his mental health or lack thereof. So is there a predisposition to be attracted to people who wound us in similar ways to the ways our parents wounded us? Absolutely. That's why we go to therapy when we're adults. We go to therapy not to reenact those patterns.
Well, what are some things that would be, minus things we're seeing in this trial, but anyone listening, like, would be a wake-up call for maybe I need to get therapy, or obviously
everyone needs to get therapy. Everyone needs to get therapy. Yes, if you just to be the walking wounded, you need to be in therapy. If you want to thrive, you definitely need therapy. The idea that some of us have come out of childhood having hit the childhood lottery and don't have wounds is a level of, I don't know, I don't know if it's willful ignorance or if it's naivete or if it's arrogance or grandiosity, but none of those look good to me. It's wrong. We all come out of childhood with a little bit. We all come out with certain fractures and certain predispositions. And unless you came out of your childhood and you were like, yo, I want to sign up for that exact thing. If that's not what you want in your adult relationship, then yeah, go into therapy, analyze your life, understand why you are the way you are so you can actually guide a partner. You know, had he done the work that he did or that he should have done that he didn't do, he would have smelled her and the familiarity of how she is such a close representation of his mother, if what he says is true. He would have smelled that a mile away, and he would have recognized that he was attracted to it the same way we're all attracted to certain people with certain traits that aren't good for us. You know, your listeners, lots of people will be able to relate to the person who's slightly unavailable. That's so attractive to so many of us. I love somebody who I have to chase just a little bit. That's really, really attractive to me. But when you've done your own work, you recognize that is a person. You can recognize that propensity to be attracted to that kind of person and talk yourself through it. You have to recognize your relationship patterns that come from your childhood and make different choices. But you can only make those different choices when you know what your relationship patterns are because you've looked at your childhood. You know, and we don't all have to sign up for psychoanalysis. I don't do that stuff. We don't all have to sit on a couch and talk about our childhood experiences ad nauseum. Like a good therapist gets that out of you in like 4 hours and then can show you how your current day choices all harken back to those experiences that you had as a little kid.
I'm wondering, Amber has obviously made it very far. Like, to make it in Hollywood, you have to be a certain level of charming and all of this stuff. And so I look at, you know, my experience with certain personality disorders or other mental, you know, health diagnoses. And I just wonder if it was almost a bait and switch, because you don't hear a lot of his past relationships having any of these, you know, volatile or toxic tendencies.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm just wondering, like, was it a bait and switch where she was charming and charismatic? Because histrionic, it is really rare, but you know, those people come off as very sure of themselves initially and very confident and have this air about them, like almost like an Anna Delvey, where you're just drawn to them in a sense because of how grandiose they are. And so I'm just wondering if for him it was that bait and switch where he didn't even know what he was into until he was 6 months or even had the ring.
Yeah, I mean, there's something there where I get what you're saying. It's just like there isn't a history of him dating, I guess, people like Amber, but because he has maybe this history with his mother, that he almost kind of got caught in a fly trap. But once he was caught, then he was kind of stuck responding. He kind of got trapped in like this relationship with his mother. Is there something there to that? Because his dating history doesn't suggest that he's always dated people like this.
Yeah.
So I would say I would be willing to put it in blood that there is no way that he doesn't have some of this toxicity threading through most of his long-term relationships. And it may have been that these women were his exes were healthier than Amber, and they just didn't roll the way she rolls. But what you do anywhere is what you do everywhere. So he didn't just get caught in a fly trap. He's attracted to women who behave a certain way. And it may be that these others, his exes, just didn't have it at the level that she had it at. Now, to address your question, people with a personality disorder, they don't necessarily show it to the world. So they can be high functioning. They can be successful in life. They know that they can't act like animals with certain people. And so they keep their shit together at work. They keep their shit together in certain relationships. It's the people that they're closest to who see the gore and the infection that they walk around with 24/7. Now, in terms of a bait and switch, there is something to be said for that. Like when any of us start a new relationship, we're obviously, not only are we trying to show the best sides of ourselves, but what happens in the honeymoon stage of relationship, which is where we're infatuated and falling in love, is that our brains are producing all these neural chemicals and some of them make us easier to be around, make us literally feel better than we normally feel and act more appropriately than we normally act. And some of these neural chemicals also minimize our ability to identify red flags. So this is happening in both partners in the honeymoon phase of the relationship. And that is why, people in my field will say, do not commit until you've been together well beyond that honeymoon, because you do not know somebody until you've been through the first stomach flu with them, until you've seen them in a loss, until you've seen them be devastated. And, thankfully, most of us don't experience those things inside of 6 or 9 months consistently. So you have to put in the time and get the miles under your belt to make sure that whether it's a conscious bait and switch or just a result of everyone being high from the beginning stages of that relationship, you need those chemicals to dissipate so that you can come back down to earth and see one another through the lens that you're going to be living with the rest of your lives.
When you say commit, do you mean like long-term, like moving in, engagement, or marriage? You're not necessarily suggesting like defining the relationship, right?
Oh no, I'm not talking about defining the relationship. I'm talking like
there's a lot of people listening and be like, oh great, I can just no commitment for
married.
me.
Yeah, don't get married.
Yeah.
Don't get married before you're out of that honeymoon, because you don't know the person, because you don't know the person and they don't know who you are, because neither of you are who you really are. Yeah. It's not necessarily this bait and switch that's conscious, that is manipulative. Although I will say the different personality disorders that she meets criteria for, manipulation is a huge component to the borderline, a huge component.
So last question I have for you is, we've been kind of talking about, up until this point that, there's this evidence that, Amber did this to Johnny, and, there's evidence that he certainly spoke to her in a very toxic way. How, as someone in your field, how do you approach or diagnose when you have two people in a relationship who are being abusive to each other or just being toxic to each other? Like, there seems to be a lot of, finger pointing
and the substance use element.
Yeah. And so how do we look at that? I think I probably inappropriately used the word co-abuse a couple of weeks ago, in terms of like, how does someone in your field, you sit down with a couple, they start talking, and then after like 15 minutes, you're thinking, you guys are terrible to each other. How do you look at that situation?
Well, first of all, when you have when you're in a situation where one or both partners are at least abusing substances, if not in a full-on addictive problem, you have to fix the addiction before you can deal with the human beings. The addiction needs to be handled first, because you're not getting to the person when they're in the throes of an addiction. So first and foremost, both of them needed to be in some sort of program where they were for sure, where it was confirmed through like random drug testing that they weren't using and that they were working a program. The next thing is that both of these people seem to be incapable of taking almost any responsibility for the problems in the relationship. Johnny says, I didn't put cigarettes out on her, I just flipped a cigarette butt at her. I'm sorry, that's a distinction without a difference, in my opinion. And the idea that he thinks that that's a distinction is very, very telling to who he is as a human being, and just like how unaware he is about how he presents and how much of this is his responsibility. One of the most damning parts of having a personality disorder is that the person with a personality disorder is often so hypersensitive to any honest feedback and critique that they like bristle under it. And so they surround themselves with yes men and women, people who just enable them, because nobody wants to deal with the nut that comes out when they set a boundary with them, or when they gently suggest that something might be their responsibility. And so the two of these people would give any therapist such a run for her money, because neither one of them wants to be responsible, or neither one of them wants to look in a mirror. So at the point at which the addiction were handled and being managed, then the real work starts. And that would be such a high bar for any professional, because neither of those two has any inkling into how they look to the rest of the world and how they contributed to the toxicity of that relationship. I am not surprised that they were together. They were perfect for each other.
In the worst possible way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Self-awareness is really hard to teach someone too. Like it's so impossible if someone lacks self-awareness to try to instill it in them.
And the irony is that people like them would never seek out a therapist like me, because I'm known for giving honest feedback. That's my whole identity professionally. And so the people that come to me are the ones that are open to hearing it. They would never want somebody like me. They would go to like a traditional therapist that would validate them into like, I don't know, an emotional coma.
I'm curious, like with this news, Ash, and particularly like the past week, shedding light on personality disorders and other mental health diagnoses, I think there's also been kind of a reactionary, other people who have those diagnoses being worried about the way it's being portrayed in media. I'm curious if you have any insight on the way that we can approach talking about this trial and these mental health conditions, and like understanding the way they factor in, while also doing so in a way that gives kind of like dignity and respect to people who may have these diagnoses.
I was disturbed by the doctor's minimization of Amber's suggestion that she had PTSD. Most people who have a personality disorder have trauma in their history, whether they're struggling with PTSD or not. I can't speak to that, but there is an absolute common denominator between people who are diagnosed with personality disorders and having lived through often developmental trauma as children that never got worked out. So it is important for all of us to remember that hurt people. Healthy people don't hurt people. And when we do hurt people, we are apologetic and empathetic and willing to repair the wound that we create. So it is, what I read was that the doctor that evaluated her said that she doesn't believe that she has PTSD, because apparently PTSD is one of, again, I may have this wrong, but I do know I read this, that PTSD is apparently an easy diagnosis to fake, or the easiest diagnosis to fake. I don't know. I don't know if I buy that. I don't know if if Amber were as diagnostically sophisticated so as to be able to meet criteria for one thing and not really have it, I would think that she would also have the self-awareness to have not met criteria for histrionic or borderline personality disorder, because when somebody's evaluating for that, the questions are very obvious what we're assessing for. And so I don't think that you can say, oh, I diagnosed her with this, but I don't believe that she meets criteria for that, because it's very easy to fake this. I don't think that those two things go together to me. And I think it's important for everyone to remember that, again, people who are wounded are the people who wind up, we're not born with personality disorders. They're a maladaptive coping mechanism to a very dysfunctional environment, childhood generally. And then the person just goes through life like the rest of us do, finding people who fit into their worldview. And if your worldview is a healthier one, you're going to surround yourself with healthier people. And for people who have personality disorders, the worldview is not such a it's not such a stable and secure one. And so the people they surround themselves with are going to reinforce those patterns of behavior that they learned as children. And so, yes, compassion is indicated with people with personality disorders, and also they need to do their own work.
Do you know, and if you don't know, that's fine, but do you know why, in this case, one question I have, and I think we were discussing, how is this not a violation of Amber Heard's HIPAA rights with her diagnosis being broadcasted across the world? I mean, I know it's in court. Do you give away that right? Once
she had to. Yeah, no, she had to. So when you engage in a lawsuit like this, where each partner is claiming emotional damages to the other, you have to waive your rights to all sorts of things. And the doctor that diagnosed her, I believe, was either court appointed or came through. I
think he hired her.
It's very possible, and I think it's I think it's inexcusable that her team didn't then turn around and require him to be evaluated as well.
That's interesting to me.
Yeah, why wasn't he evaluated?
I mean, he should have been, and should be. And here's the deal: if you're in a relationship voluntarily with somebody like that, apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I mean, water seeks its own level. We attract what we are. So pointing a finger and being like, oh my God, I married crazy, doesn't look good for you.
Yeah.
I would actually love to work with either one of them, because
I feel like a lot of people in your field would want to, because obviously there's a lot to unpack there.
It would be a great challenge. Yeah. It would be a really great challenge. But it would have to be the kind of thing where it was like with any therapist, it would have to be my way as the therapist or the highway, because the level of negotiation and manipulation and pushing boundaries and testing and trying to dilute something that is known to work, that would be an endless conflict between the therapist and somebody, who struggles the way both of these two individuals clearly do.
Well, Dr. Darcy, I really appreciate you joining us. It's been really insightful. Can you let my audience know where they can find you and follow you for more of your content?
Absolutely. You can follow me at askdrdarcy.com.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, guys.
Take
care.
Bye.
All right. Lots to unpack there. Wow.
I know.
What are your thoughts, Morgan?
I don't know. I'm still thinking about what you asked too, of how to do these, people or individuals with mental health diagnoses. And I think what's really important to remember is Amber might be the exception, not the rule. Just because someone has a diagnosis, someone can have 100 people can have the same diagnosis, and in those 100 people, it's going to manifest so differently.
Sure.
So I think everyone, just with any diagnosis, narcissism, schizophrenia, bipolar, no matter what it is, it's that diagnosis isn't representative of them. There's always the exceptions to the rule. So I don't know, it's a lot. It's heavy.
I think maybe also to answer your question too, and Dr. Darcy obviously was very passionate about
everyone
needing therapy. You're not getting any disagreement from us.
Big
and it sounds like her expectation is listen, it's treatable, as she said.
Yeah, like self-accountability.
So it's kind of like do the work, and then again the follow-up question is, well, how do you know if you don't have these borderline personality disorders, or if you suffer from bipolar? I guess if you went to therapy, maybe you would get diagnosed, because I feel like a lot of people struggle with feeling like there's something not right, or where they feel misunderstood or they feel confused, and maybe that's when they seek therapy. Hopefully it's therapy through a professional they seek, versus especially out here in LA, you can run into like a lot of life coaches or
oh my gosh,
or
so many
podcast hosts that want to diagnose you.
I hate when people, like my listeners, I had one write in, she's like, yeah, we've been having couples counseling with my pastor, and I'm like, no, like I understand people are super religious, but like that's not a trained professional to help you. And
unless they've gone
through that as well,
like they went to a proper schooling for that.
As long as it was like training and not a weekend couples counseling camp.
Yes.
But the only bone I have to pick is like access to therapy isn't easy. It's not affordable for a lot of people. It's difficult to access. There's a big shortage of therapy providers in the US. I don't know about other countries. So it's like, especially if you're in a rural area, good luck getting a good therapist.
And it's very expensive.
It's so expensive. So I will just say with that, it's like, I get there's a lot of people out there that might be in the boat of like, I'm trying to get help. I'm trying to do the work, but I just can't do it. I don't have access to it.
100%. The only pushback sometimes that I would give there, because that is true, and I think, you talk about it in your podcast, we talk about it here, it's just changing the stigma around therapy, because so many of us have no problem investing in gym memberships and random diets or coffee or clothes, and we just don't, we'll say, oh, I can't afford this. It's just like, well, sometimes our ability to afford things has to come down to how we prioritize things.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it seems like such an inconvenience to spend money on therapy, right? Or it seems like it's an inconvenience to spend money on a doctor, because it's like, well, if I were just healthy, I wouldn't have to spend money on this. I could spend it on things I enjoy. And we just look at, we look at going to the gym, or, taking kind of, let's say a cooking class. A cooking class is an investment in ourselves because we want to learn how to cook, right? But therapy is also an investment in ourselves, even if we aren't like I started therapy. I just felt like I kind of needed it. Things were going well. Now I'm on like an every other week rotation. I'm just tuning the piano, so to speak.
A little bit of maintenance here and
there. Every once in a while, I'm like, "Fuck, Darlene," I just, I relapsed, or something like that.
Well, and that's like the analogy I think that's come up a lot. It's like you get your car regular oil changes. Like, what do you do for yourself that's regular maintenance?
Yeah,
you need therapy.
So while it is expensive and not super affordable for everyone, I think there are also a large group of people who choose not to make that investment in themselves, and money might be tight, but what are other areas we're spending money on? And shoot, if our mental health isn't where it needs to be, it compounds how difficult life is on us.
Yeah.
When we feel insecure about ourselves, we project that onto everyone around us, and then we wonder why we're just having bad days, or we can't get out of our own way. It's just like, well, I mean, at least for me, I've been in states of mind, whether it's because of a breakup or heartbreak, where I just made my world around me that much more miserable and darker.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think we've all been there, that self-sabotage, that, I mean, I hate the world and I'm just going to live in my misery kind of moment. So, been there. And I think, too, therapy's hard because you don't get a tangible thing. It's not like going to the store and you walk away with a shirt. It's like not this tangible thing. But I think a lot of people could rebudget or allocate their money a little better, because there are a lot of online services now that are very affordable.
What do we have left on this trial that we have going on that, like, I guess not looking forward to seems weird to say?
No, but I saw someone there
awaiting, anticipating.
I'm anticipating Amber. When does Amber Heard take the stand? When does Paul Bettany
I don't know if she necessarily has to, does she? I think she can.
Well, also that's my question too, and maybe we need like a legal expert here. Johnny Depp is suing Amber Heard for $50 million. Again, I don't think he cares about the money.
Mm-mm.
She countersued for $100 million. I don't know if that's really about the money either. But also, what does that mean since they're both suing each other? Is it 6 weeks because Johnny Depp's going to go through, like his defense is going to try Amber Heard and they get to defend their accusations, and then we have like another 3 weeks of Amber Heard, her team putting, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like telling their version of the story. Like I'm really curious about that.
Well, she testifies on Wednesday, and also
This Wednesday.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's worth noting that she
my.
fired her PR team like days before testifying.
Okay.
So what's
not her
everyone doing on
lawyers.
Wednesday? Should we get together?
Yeah. Get
Get the popcorn.
the popcorn or drinks ready.
What,
Yeah.
I'm curious why she fired her PR team. I mean, other than like obviously the press hasn't
I
been
think she
super
said they weren't like
positive.
painting her in a good light.
They
Well,
don't
I
have
don't-
much to work with.
Yeah. I mean, people are watching the trial. They're seeing the testimony of her
Yeah.
shitting on beds and
I saw
pictures of Johnny
footage
Depp.
of both of them leaving the courthouse and like people outside beyond the gate, and like she left and everyone started yelling like, "Why did you poop in the bed?" Like da da da, like all this negative
my
stuff.
God.
And then Johnny came out later and people were like, Johnny.
Oh no, it's like very
Yeah.
one-sided. Also,
Yeah.
have we seen how like Amber Heard's dressing like Johnny Depp?
Yeah,
Have
the
we,
suit with the tie.
like
Which is a part of like the diagnoses
Is
where
it?
you emulate your partner. So there's people like comparing her style before she ever dated him and then her style when she was dating him. And she would wear all the rings, the bracelets, the hat. Like she looked like she was borrowing
I
his
mean,
clothes.
couples do that to some degree all the time.
But this was intense.
Yeah.
This was a lot.
It may be transitioning away from this trial to a different couple situation. We have Olivia
Oh yes.
Wilde getting served
Oh.
court papers while speaking on a panel.
She's on stage, and she gets served court papers.
Was this like a TED Talk type almost panel? Like
it was
what
it was promoting her new movie,
Ugh.
Harry Styles' girlfriend.
Everything comes back to Harry, really, when you
Well,
think about it.
I don't know. A lot of people have attributed her marriage ending
To
to
Harry.
Harry. So
Have they?
yeah, so maybe this is like kind of the last like FU from
Yeah,
Jason
she's
being
promoting
like,
the movie he's in.
Yeah.
Do you think? Well, that's the big question, because Jason's team came out and denied it.
Yes.
It- it's
Like
like
knowledge
I-
that that would be the way of.
It's like this would be this. I never condone this or approve this. I was unaware this would happen. The person who served papers had credentials to this event. We've all seen the movies where people
Oh,
who
my
serve papers
gosh.
like dress up,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
in costumes
Pizza
and character,
boy, yeah.
to serve someone. So it's like
Yeah.
a whole thing. But do we believe Jason Sudeikis? Do we believe Ted Lasso would do something?
I
This is
mean-
bad. If it's really bad if he did that.
yeah.
That's a level of petty.
Yeah, because it's like the event that she was speaking at, CinemaCon, is it is used for, it's like pitching to movie theaters about your film. Like this is very much a business. This is not even just like a vanity or, you know, or like a speak. Like this is her speaking on a panel. Like this is very related to her livelihood and her work. And so it's a really
Well, people get
petty-
served papers at work all the time. So if it's,
Yeah.
I would think it would be worse if it was like a public forum.
Well, I think, but it was very public.
Yeah, no, this
Yeah, no,
is
I
like
guess,
spotlight.
yeah.
I think too, if the person had credentials to be there, her talk couldn't have been that long. What is it? A 30-minute, 45-minute talk? You can't wait in the crowd so you don't lose her.
It definitely was like the
Come on,
person
yeah.
serving
Use
it.
some tact.
How much control does Jason
I
have
don't
over
know.
that? Like,
Probably
do you
very
say, I'd like
hands-off.
to serve this person, and then it's up to the people serving?
It's probably at their discretion, honestly.
Yeah. Like, did he just tell them to serve her the day before, that morning? Was he deliberate? I think that's like, but he's saying no. He's saying
Yeah.
he didn't have anything to do with it.
But that's what everyone's gonna say.
Yeah.
Like no one's gonna be
That's
like,
the thing. If,
how do
you-
I
prove
wanted
it?
to
if he did
embarrass her.
if he did this on purpose, is there any like he wouldn't be like, yeah, I mean, I did that.
No,
Yeah,
you'd never admit
he would
that.
lie, right?
Totally.
Well, because then this whole thing is about custody. That's going to be brought up in court then too. Like, oh, so you want, you know what I mean? It's a bad reflection on his character. How does that get into him as a father?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Like, if he did do this on purpose, that's a level of petty
You wouldn't want your kids learning from that.
No. Also, like, how old are their kids? Do we know?
Let's look.
Like, you're going to
old enough
research your parents, and like you're gonna Google yourself and all this stuff. Like, to see that animosity between parents is like really hard.
8 and 5 is what I'm seeing.
Okay, so they're little,
but they're only a few years removed from knowing how to Google.
Yeah, no, couple years.
Yeah,
that's tough. That's really tough. I think co-parenting is hard, and like I don't understand. Their relationship must be super volatile if she's getting served.
I feel
in this
like
way.
that surprised people in general, even that she was served at all.
Yeah,
because
it's not.
Do we just? Is it the Ted Lasso effect?
He's gotten too big.
Well, he plays such a lovable, kind, nice
exactly.
character.
It's more that. It's just like, do we see Jason, like, when a movie star or an actor portrays a villain for long periods of time? There was a character on The Walking Dead, and I stopped watching The Walking Dead a long time ago, but I forget the character's name, but he was a bad guy and hated, and he would talk about how people all the time on the street would just like say mean things to him because he was such a cruel character on the show. The opposite with Ted Lasso. It's just like, here's this like incredibly empathetic character he plays who always looks the other way and sees the good in people and see the goods and good in things. A character who got divorced on the show and had his heart broken. Like he kind of, so then it's like, oh, is he playing himself?
Yeah. He's also like from SNL. So people have so much nostalgia with that show. And so it's like, he just has this like really kind dad at a barbecue who's like, no, it's not too late for me to get you a burger, like, and fires back up the grill. Like, it's so, we have this like very intense perception of him, and then you have no idea what's happening behind closed doors.
I think it's maybe just shocking because from what I've heard, they issued statements like, we just fell out of love, we're really great friends still.
Those are always bullshit.
Always bullshit. But this also was around the time, like, I don't even think they had announced their divorce yet. And she was going to like a wedding with Harry, and people were like, wait, is she cheating? No, they're just saying they're friends. It's very apparent things have developed further now, but like, I don't know. So maybe there is a lot of resentment and
Team Harry Styles on this side of things.
There's a source that has said, I mean, again, it's an unnamed source, so how would we hold them accountable? But the source, who's a person familiar with the situation, said that Sudeikis did not know when or where the papers would be delivered to her.
Which is totally believable.
Yeah. Why did it get to this level?
I don't know if like you could have waited till afterwards. Mm-hmm. So like someone who was savvy enough to get the credentials.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care who you hire. Right? They have a track record, references, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're Jason Sudeikis, big time movie star,
you're going to cover your bases.
Yes, you have a team. The only thing I will say to that is sometimes in the public eye, I will say with people who have teams, people will say things like, why didn't they do the due diligence? Why didn't they do the background check, et cetera, et cetera? And the truth is, people are lazy or their teams don't have as much follow through.
Or they work for an established company and you would think they'd insure all of their employees.
But part of me wants to say, if Jason Sudeikis hired this person, like, didn't this person have a reputation of like, you have to hire someone who can get to Olivia Wilde,
which is an incredible challenge. And I believe that the person was in the audience, so they had to approach the stage. So it's not like they had like backstage access and could have given it to her.
So they signed up for this.
So they had to be incredibly like
accepted it though. Like if someone walked,
she thought it was a script. She thought it was like a hopeful like art. That's how I got my first internship in Hollywood. Was like it's like a late night host came to my school and I like walked up to the stage and gave them my resume. Papers. Yeah, and I gave them divorce. I said, "Give me custody."
Well, that's what if you're Jason Sudeikis and you're hiring someone to serve your wife court papers, and she is a celebrity, a big time celebrity herself, who's dating
you have
a bigger
to get
celebrity.
Security. How do you physically handle?
Wouldn't you be curious to say like, how do you plan on going about serving these papers to my very like inaccessible ex partner?
Yeah,
I don't think they were married, so
they weren't.
I believe they were. I don't believe they were married. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I just think.
And so I would beg the question as to why, and that makes it kind of hard to believe that he might not have known.
But also like
I'm 50-50.
I know, but I'm like, he's got money. He's got the money to pay for the person that can get to her. Like, if this were me, I want to stay out of the spotlight even now. Like, I'm like, yeah, I have a podcast, but like, I kind of still fly under the radar where I don't get recognized in person. I'm like, I like this. This is good.
I hear you.
So if I was in their shoes, I'd be ultra concerned with my image, what gets out about my family, keeping my kids safe in the future, all of this. I'd pay the extra money to make sure this is served discreetly. I would never have even let it get to this point. So it's like,
what do you believe?
I don't know. I think, honestly, I think this might have been a little malicious. And he can play it off like I had no idea when they were going to serve it. I just paid this service and blah, 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 blah. But like, you could have ensured it didn't happen like this. You could have ensured and said, I want it as discreet as possible. You can't tell me she doesn't have an assistant or a PR person, like that you could go to their team and be like, hey, you know what? We want to prevent this from being messy. Let's handle it.
Well, that's another
like
thing. You don't always have to like blindside someone.
No.
You can say, hey, listen, this is happening.
Let's arrange a time where we can serve you. And
or are you going to make us chase like Carmen Sandiego it and chase you around the world? Because that's only happens when you try to avoid being served papers. But if you're going through a custody battle,
she probably knew this was coming,
right?
Anyways. So why even chance this?
Why not
from
arrange
happening?
it? Behind closed doors. It's a good question.
I saw a video, and it was like just her dancing at Coachella, like, or her dancing at one of his other shows, and people are like, "Oh, Olive needs to like F off, like." Olive doesn't deserve. They call her Olive.
Harry Styles' fan base doesn't like Olivia Wilde.
His fan base hates her, like death threats,
because they want to get with him.
Yeah, that's not okay.
Did you ever experience that? Where like even your girlfriend now, it's like
no,
that's nice.
Not really.
I can't even imagine.
Not on any noticeable level. I'm sure it might exist, but for the most part, everyone's quite
supportive.
Yeah,
that's nice.
and like, I mean, not everyone's. Yeah, I mean,
for the most part, from what you see.
I think there's always a couple people who are critical.
I don't know. It sucks. I feel bad. She can't even like dance at his shows without like people taking videos of her and just like ruthlessly tearing her apart online. It's like she's
like
just
critiquing her dancing.
Yeah, and she's just sitting there like just trying to enjoy her boyfriend's show and can't live her life.
It is so interesting though, because it's like, I mean, the Jonas Brothers all have wives now, and they're all in the audience dancing. And I feel like it's a positive thing. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, such supportive wives.
Do you think it's because like they're
the Jonas sisters?
Yeah, why do you think that is? It's because like it's a collection of
brothers.
I also just think they're a little earlier. Like, I think the Jonas Brothers were like slightly before. So I think as a whole, like the fans matured. I also think like the culture around One Direction, like I think that was like in a lot of ways, like one of the most not maybe original, but like when we talk about stans, like I think One Direction, like they had this like like chokehold on like the teen Tumblr girls of America.
Teen Tumblr girls,
like they really did, and so I think it makes sense that they would have this like very possessive approach.
Well, even Harry Styles came out and said something about he had like this kind of challenging relationship with sex as it relates to like his private life and how
because there was a clause in his contract about him sort of like respectability, so like behaving in any way inappropriately with his like One Direction contract, and so that's
so vague.
Yeah, and I think it's probably like very subject to interpretation and like control by.
Can you imagine your label saying you can't have sex, or your job like? You can't have
or
sex.
just like can't talk about it, or you have to.
Meanwhile, Nick is like, please give me the details.
What's the tea?
I would never ask Harry about his sex life. No, we're not going to interview Harry. He's going to help us answer relationship questions.
You're right.
6 months.
Don't worry, Harry. Don't worry.
Don't worry. Yeah, Harry, it's
okay.
Safe,
you can keep it in.
It's a safe environment. Do we want to talk any Selling Sunset? You were watching.
I have been watching.
We have Mary tomorrow.
Oh my god.
Update. We have Mary tomorrow, guys. I know we moved some things around the schedule to accommodate Mary.
Yeah.
So
you got to.
So we got her.
Yeah, this season I started 1 through 5. And then I was like, okay, I'm getting really tired of the Christina's a Victim show. And so I skipped to the last episode and I was just like, let's see if anything changes. Literally picked up right where I left off on episode 5 to 10. Christine sitting there, poor me, woe is me. And I'm like, aren't you tired?
Yeah.
Aren't you tired?
I was watching it this weekend. You've always been a big fan of Christine.
Yeah. Christine and I go back.
She makes the show dramatic, but like...
I guess I'm just, I am...
Without Christine, I genuinely... And the thing is, like, I feel like I've kind of going through an identity crisis because I see what you're seeing now. But without Christine, I'm not sure what we would be talking about because she's filled every season.
More of the houses.
More. Yeah. I guess I'm more.
Where'd they go?
On a personal level, I'm just more like, does she enjoy it? It seems like almost hard to watch sometimes.
It is. I think Christine definitely. I mean, she talks about it on season 1 where she was like, "I was the ugly duckling. No one thought I was hot, and now here I am." Because she talked about it. She showed a guy she knew from high school or something. He came to look at a house, and he like asked her out or whatever that was.
And then they went to Ocean Prime.
Yeah,
I know.
All the restaurants this season, I'm like, Beauty in Essex, really?
I know.
Like,
I'm like, okay.
But I
Beauty
think
in Essex.
Yeah,
they went there this season.
I'm like, the choices, but I just think she's someone who, I don't know if it's maybe, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist diagnosing her, but I definitely think she is a deeply, deeply insecure person, whether that's from her past. Living in LA is hard. There's always these beauty standards and whatever, but Christine to me is deeply insecure. And that is just sabotaging everything.
Here's what I didn't understand. Because at first I was watching it and I got in my head about like, well, like because Christine's always like, I'm just being honest, like there's that version of she'll say like offensive or off-putting things to these people. And, I appreciate people who are honest, right? I always say, if everyone likes you, then you're not your most honest self, like in public.
Yeah.
If you're a people pleaser, then like, and everyone thinks you're the greatest, and like you, like no one really knows who you are. I do believe that. And so at first I'm thinking, Christine's just saying things people don't want to hear, but it's the truth. And that's what Christine says. But then after watching it a while, I'm thinking, yeah, that's just kind of a bullshit excuse for someone who's like not interested in being a friend. Like, like at some point, some of these people were friends with her, right? And then she kind of just like, you said things that as a friend hurt my feelings. Truth or not, it's just like you chose not to like support me, or you choose to scratch an itch or an insecurity that you knew I might have, and call it what you want, but like you're just not being an empathetic friend. To me, that's what Christine is really guilty of. Like, I think it's kind of bullshit that she is saying things and calling it like just the truth, which that might be true, but you're still alienating people that you once or still call friends. And that just seems like, don't you want to have
a friend?
A friend?
A friend?
Like, I'm fine with not having a bunch of like bullshit friends.
No.
And having your close group of friends, but she seems to be struggling in that area.
But the thing is, I feel like the main difference of Christine season 1 and the Christine we've seen in season 5 is she's always said, she calls it like it is, she's honest. She did that in season 1. If you think back to like the finale of season 1, when she and Chriselle got into like a really heated argument, she was calling her out for lying. She did it in a very like dramatic way, but I could see where she was coming from. She was holding Chriselle accountable. She went too far by saying like, do you remember? Do you still have like effing dementia? Like, da, da, da. Like she was really like strong in the way she did it, but she was holding her to what she'd previously said. And now you see scenes of her, like I think it was maybe when she was sitting with Heather, and Heather was like, you've said terrible things about all these girls. And she's like, no, I haven't. I've said nothing. She's like,
Jokes.
You said like,
it's a joke.
They're like, whatever. And she's like, you're right. I did say that. That's fucking hilarious. But I'm like, but it's the wishy-washy. It's not like calling it like it is now. It's like a weird, there are questions.
I don't even believe that she thinks it's all that funny. I think that's just, again, not psychoanalyzing her. Yeah, I think
there's no accountability at all.
Yeah,
even
it's
like
a tough watch.
The text message with like Amanza, and Amanza was like calling her out, and Amanza was like, hey, yeah, it's awkward. I'm not making eye contact with you even at your broker or your
Broker's Open.
And she was like, you told me to stay out of your business. And she was like, no, I didn't.
And she's like, pull up the text.
She's like, read the text. And Amanza reads it and it's word for word. Stay out of my business.
But then Christine was like, but keep going.
Keep
but it's
reading.
Like, we didn't say that was the only thing that was said. That's where I'm like, again, I'm having an identity crisis.
Stay out of your business.
Because I was Christine was mom to me, and now I feel like I've been abandoned on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Well, I also feel like it's very easy to justify her behavior because she was kind of carrying the show on her back in terms of creating drama. And so I think it's probably very easy for her to be like,
that's the tough
like
part,
to kind of like justify it by being like, well, I'm giving them a show. Like as much as people can like talk shit about me,
Everyone
like
needs the villain.
Yeah.
Well, there is truth to that. You know, like every time we recap The Bachelor or other reality TV shows, like as fans, we watch it. And when we're watching reality TV, it's like, how could they? Or, oh my God, I can't believe it. And it's like, this is a TV show still.
And
this is not this is not the Truman Show. We're just walking around following people and getting unedited, uncut versions without soundtracks. Like the
it's not a documentary.
Yeah.
No.
You know, and people play into their characters. People on The Bachelor who have seen the show and they think they know how it works and they've been fans their whole life some people walk into that house and they're playing a role. They're not their authentic self.
No.
They're full of shit. And other people are more authentic. So it's like, how do you criticize, like she's still worthy of criticism, Christine, but is she maybe, people always say producers, does she have her producers who are like, you're the star, you are funny, this is amazing, ha 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 ha, or is it really just a sad person who wants a hug and doesn't know how to ask for it?
I'm going to go towards that because I think to act like one way on the show, okay, that's fine. It's reality TV. Producers want to make this the storyline for the season. Sure, let's go for it. Christine's the villain. It's carrying the team. But when it starts bleeding into she's going to TMZ saying, I don't care about this wedding, or going on people's podcasts talking mad shit about other people on the show, it's like, this isn't just a show. Like, you genuinely are sabotaging your relationships with these people.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, which is different than other people. Other people will go on the show and be like, oh, we're just best friends in real life. And you're like, what do we believe? It's all fake.
Yeah.
You know who I really want on this show? Chelsea.
Can we find out if she's actually British? Because rumors are going around that she's not actually British.
You think it's... Oh, I DM'd her and asked her to come on.
Can you send your birth certificate in order to...
People think it's a fake British accent?
Yeah.
Yeah. People are
she
like...
dips in and out of it in certain scenes.
Which, like, we all adapt. Like, even if you hear, like, Meghan Markle, after she had been living in the UK for some time, you adapt where you are very quickly. And
you hear me, like 2 wines deep at a bar talking to a British man. Like, I'm putting on an accent by accident.
I have a drunk British alter ego. I feel you.
Take me to the South. I'll be throwing out y'alls in about 12 minutes,
Also, she has 2 Nigerian parents who immigrated to the UK. So it's like, if that's the home you're growing up in, your accent's going to be a little different. But I have seen a lot of tweets where people are like, I'm British and I do not recognize this.
I bet she's... I mean, I've known of her existence for like a week, so I don't know her that well. But I really enjoy watching her, and she seems to be like, she's newer to the she's new to the show. So I feel like we get a fresh perspective of her point of view on the situations.
I know.
Do we think Vanessa's leaving? I feel like Vanessa might be leaving.
Yeah, she was very non-existent. Well, showed her going off on a little plane.
She's not selling enough houses.
And she has the long distance boy. Well, now they're engaged. They got engaged, which we didn't see on the show, but in real life, they're now engaged.
Thank God.
Do we think
that promise ring was sad?
Do we think that they were like, they do fake phone calls on this show?
Didn't you see? Okay, here's my other thing.
He did an interview though, and he was like,
I know.
I've tested it, and I can have my camera on my
I think
phone.
he's full of shit. The first time
Emma doesn't even have the Wi-Fi password for The Office. Did you see the picture of her computer screen? It's prompting her for the Wi-Fi password.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think it's both. I haven't seen every season of Selling Sunset, but I do remember watching the first season, and I remember there was a scene of one of the brothers on the phone, And as someone who's been on reality TV a handful of times, I just remember thinking to myself, this is the most fake phone call of all fake phone calls.
Phone's upside down.
My response to that is, whatever. Again, it's a TV show. I don't expect that they are like, think about it. If I'm buying a house, I don't want you recording our half of our phone conversation. Like, I don't want any part of that. I totally understand that they have fake phone conversations.
Yeah.
So like, and then I saw his interview. I wish he would have just kind of like not answered the question. Be like, oh, like.
But he really doubled down.
No, he doubled down. He's like, I tested it.
Yeah, it was a real phone call. And recently I tested it to see if I could have my camera and do a phone at the same time. And you can.
No, I don't believe him for a second.
I'm like, where's my phone? Let's try.
Should I try it?
I bet he tested it. I don't think he's the type of person who would put that out there without testing it because you would have heard about it.
Hold on. It's a very stupid lie because we're all about to...
Hold on. You're calling me right now.
I'm calling Nick and then I'm going to open my camera.
I mean, you can do other things on the phone. I know.
Yeah, I'm sure it's
still
not
going.
that hard
Is
to
the phone
believe.
call still going on?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't record voice memos when you're on the phone.
And you can't turn on your flashlight if your camera app is open.
Correct.
There's weird little things. So,
but also, why is he taking? I mean, maybe he could have been taking photos of the property and then got a phone call.
Cheek hit it.
Well, he was at the office. Maybe he was taking photos of Chriselle.
The head rubbing. Oh my God. I think that's one thing that I could have done without.
What do you think of the brothers?
I think they both, I don't know that much about the other one because he seems just very insecure and wants to let's talk about me and my relationship.
Brett.
Yeah, but so Jason.
He's like the shorter of the short brothers.
No.
I don't know.
Brett was always, I don't know.
I don't know a lot about
Brett was even more of a bachelor, but Brett was dating, I think they've maybe broken up, but I forget her name, but she got very close with all the girls despite not being an agent.
Yeah.
And they were together for a while.
Okay.
Because she went to Europe with them.
Yeah.
Although I did agree with the one brother when it was, when him and Chriselle were, not that because I'm like, what the fuck do I know about real estate? But
when he wanted 10-6, that was Brett.
Or he didn't want to give concessions. Like, you have a second buyer with a higher offer. Like, that's just like standard. You definitely don't concede. I was like, Chriselle.
Especially in LA's real estate market, people drop everything. Like every contingency you can drop, people drop out here.
Yeah.
Like I've dropped contingencies and you still don't get the house. And so it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I didn't understand Chriselle there. But
impressed she could fit through the doggy door. That thing was tiny.
That was
She's also small though. Like she even in person is like a very small person.
She's tiny. Yeah. And what's crazy is she makes him look big.
That's true.
Like her head in comparison to his when they're sitting at the table, I'm like, she's tiny, but like she makes him look big.
You can be shorter and have a big head.
I know, but like he's really little.
He's like a very buff Mr. Clean, like kind of scaled to short king size.
Yeah.
Short king spring.
I will admit one thing I do really like about him though is he doesn't come across as being insecure about his height or any of that like toxic side that you can see from people that have insecurities.
Yeah, I mean, as bosses, they seem hard, but like fair.
Communicate very well.
Yeah.
Let me hear you out, blah, blah, blah. But I think there was like one scene where Chriselle was wearing heels and he's like looking up at her. And he's like very tall today. I like it. And I'm like, I love this.
Yeah, they're very self-assured and confident.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just
short kings.
They just like to they're self-identified bachelors. Morgan, you've been very delightful.
Thank you for
coming on. Where can people find you? I know I went on your podcast.
You did go on my podcast.
Takes.
So by the time yours comes out, that one will be out so people can watch you on mine. It's 2 Hot Takes, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, everything.
You have a very soothing voice. This is the first thing I noticed.
Yeah.
But it's a great show. I had a ton of fun on it.
I know. Your takes were really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you did good.
And where else can they follow you?
My personal is Morgan Absher.
How do you spell it?
Absher.
Great. Well, thanks for listening, guys. Don't forget to send in your questions for Ask Nick on Mondays or your mediation calls. We have Mary Fitzgerald from Selling Sunset tomorrow on Going Deeper. I think we're going to try our new office hours text if it all works out. And it's going to be a ton of fun. So we'll see you tomorrow. Morgan,
thank you
so much.
Bye.
Yes. Bye. Hey guys, thanks for watching. But before you go, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss any future videos, like our Mondays Ask Nick, especially if you're looking for some relationship stories and relationship advice, as well as our Wednesday interviews with your favorite celebrities and experts. See you next time.